Speaking fluent Chinese is kind of like having a superpower. Seriously. It opens up business with over 1 billion people, gives you this massive cool factor, and let's be honest, it lets you watch those super cheesy Chinese dramas without subtitles. But what does it actually take to get there? What's the real cost? Today, we're going to break down that true investment.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to kick things off by talking about the 3 currencies you spend to learn any language. Then we'll dive deep into the crazy high costs of doing things the old school way. And finally, we'll look at a much smarter path to getting fluent.
So, first up, the 3 currencies of fluency. See, learning a language isn't just about shelling out cash. Nope. It's a way bigger investment than that. And if you don't understand all the different costs, well, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail.
We're going to look at everything through the lens of 3 really crucial resources. First, there's money. That's the obvious one, right? Then there's energy, which is basically your motivation, your focus, your get up and go. And last but not least, there's time. And this is the most important one, because you can never, ever get it back. But hang on, before we start calculating costs, what are we even aiming for? What does fluent mean? Well, for our purposes, we're talking about B2 Fluency. This is that sweet spot where you can have real, spontaneous conversations and nobody has to struggle. It's like the Jackie Chan in Rush Hour level. He's not perfect, but he's super effective and everyone gets what he's saying. That's our goal. Okay, let's tackle our first and most valuable currency, time. Now, you've probably seen some official numbers floating around online, but let me tell you, they don't paint the whole picture, not even close.
So the U.S. Foreign Service Institute, the FSI, they estimate it takes about 2,200 hours to get proficient. But here's the reality check. For the average person, using a mix of the usual methods, a much more realistic number is somewhere between 3,500 and 5,000 hours. I mean, that is a massive difference.
So why is that official number so low? Well, for one, it's based on this very specific full-time government program that most of us would never use. It also completely leaves out the countless hours you're going to spend on homework, on your commute, on actual real-world practice, and maybe most important, it assumes you have the motivation of a government spy who's literally being paid to be there. That's just not reality for most of us. All right, let's move on to our second currency and see how this all starts to stack up. Money. If you follow that traditional path, well, get ready, because it can be a pretty serious hit to the wallet.
And the range of what you can spend is just huge. I mean, look at this. A university degree in Chinese can easily set you back over $100,000. Ouch. Even if you go for more modest options, like private tutors or a pile of books and apps, those costs really add up over the years.
So when you factor everything in, the private classes, maybe an immersion trip to China, all the online courses and apps you buy, a pretty decent ballpark estimate for the average learner to hit that B2 level is around $20,000. Now, some people spend less, for sure, but a lot of people spend way more. And that brings us to our third and honestly, maybe the most critical currency of all, energy. This is the hidden cost. It's the one that just drains your motivation and is the real reason most people quit. You know what I'm talking about. Sitting through a class on ancient Chinese poetry when all you want to do is order a coffee. Spending hours and hours writing the same character over and over, trying to make sense of some crazy grammar diagram that looks like a circuit board, or cramming for a test that you know isn't actually making you fluent. It's not just that this stuff is inefficient, it's that it's a ton of work for almost no reward. And that is a perfect recipe for burnout.
You know, there's a great saying that really hits the nail on the head. Burnout doesn't come from working hard. It comes from working hard and not seeing any results. When you pour all your energy into these methods that just don't move the needle, your motivation just tanks. And that's usually the moment you give up.
So, yeah, the traditional path is long, it's expensive, and it is absolutely draining. But, and this is the important part, the good news is there is a much more efficient way to do this. So let's move on, because a modern framework can change this whole equation completely. The whole solution comes down to a really simple but really powerful 3-step framework. First, you build a solid foundation. That means you nail pronunciation and you learn the most common characters so you're not just guessing all the time.
Second, and this is where the magic happens, you get massive amounts of understandable input. You immerse yourself in a smart way, watching shows or reading stuff that's just a little bit challenging so your brain can naturally pick up the language from context. And third, you activate what you've learned through low-pressure speaking practice. You turn all that knowledge into an actual skill. The whole thing is about real learning, not just logging classroom hours.
So let's just put this into perspective again. The old traditional path. We saw it's likely going to take you over 3,500 hours of your life. That's a colossal investment of your most precious resource. It really is.
But by focusing on an efficient framework, like the one we just talked about, it is totally possible to slash that time down to around 1,000 hours. Think about that. That's a potential savings of thousands of hours of your life. It's just incredible.
And when you put the two paths side by side, wow, the difference is just staggering. The old way costs you thousands of hours and tens of thousands of dollars. The efficient path, it costs a fraction of the time, a fraction of the money, and most importantly, it saves you a massive amount of that precious energy and motivation.
So the final question really isn't, is learning Chinese too expensive? It's this, is investing around 1,000 hours of your life using a smart, efficient method worth it to gain a skill that could genuinely change your life? When you put it like that, the answer seems pretty clear, doesn't it?